Everyone, thank you for joining us today. Happy to be here with you and with Alex. I'm Maddie Martin. I'm the head of growth and education for SMITH.AI. We are a 24/7 receptionist and web chat service serving solo and small businesses, primarily law firms, but many other service businesses as well. I'm the head of growth and education, and I'm really excited to always do these educational 1-hour webinars with experts. We call them masters. And our master today is Alex Valencia of We Do Web Content. Now, SMITH.AI has worked with We Do Web Content. I know firsthand the quality and caliber of the content and the team behind Alex that he leads. And I'm just really excited for the topic today, which is how to get high quality SEO leads for law firms. It's also for any service-driven business. You're going to get a lot out of this seminar. We're going to do a lot of Q&A. There's not necessarily a slide deck here, so I hope that doesn't disappoint you. We're going to get into a lot of meaty topics and be able to answer your questions if you're joining us live. Now, I will let Alex introduce himself in a moment, but just so you know what we're planning to cover, the main topics are why you need to create a content strategy for your law firm, the 3 types of content to work on this year in 2021, and what a content refresh is, and why Google will love your website for it. So before we get into that and many other topics, Alex, tell us about yourself. What brought your career path to where you are right now, and what drives your passion for SEO for law firms?
Well, thank you, Maddie. Thanks so much for having me on the show, and welcome everyone. So our business started back in 2008 when I was doing the marketing and I was an executive for a bank. So I'd been doing marketing and business development for years. Market crashed and I lost my job. My wife was in the same industry in the training department, and we had just had 2 little boys. They were at home, fortunate to have a severance, so we were home for a while, but a friend was starting a website. SEO wasn't huge, right, in the legal space. Content wasn't huge in the legal space. So he said, I'm starting a website, and asked my wife, Yvette, since she was a project manager and a writer, hey, I need your help writing some of this content for the site. Why don't you come and work out of the office and we'll develop that. So she worked for months, about 3 months, helping him develop the content strategy and the content for this brand new legal website built by our friends over at Foster Web Marketing. So they can tell you about the story. So Tom gave us, just some tips on here and there, and she learned everything and launched the site 3 months later. And it was getting traffic like no other legal website was ever getting before. It was like Google ate up all the content, everything they wrote, the strategy, and it continued to grow. It was probably within 6 months of launching this Social Security Veterans Disability website, it was reaching 30,000 visitors. It became the leading Social Security and Veterans website for the central to eastern side of the country.
Wow.
And Tom reached out and said, wow, we haven't seen anything like this happen. I've got 2 attorneys. If you could do the same thing for them, they're just going to be ecstatic. So why don't you guys try whatever you did with the law firm, try it on this personal injury lawyer from Boston and try it from a family lawyer from Virginia Beach. And we created a strategy and did the same thing, and partnered with Tom for a really long time, for several years. They were sending us all of their internal clients, and then eventually they built on a content team. And then we continued to grow from there. Tom and Ben Glass were, humble enough to invite us to all of their conferences, and we were getting clients from there, and just word of mouth, we just kind of became the content team for law firms. Anytime anybody needed content that their company wasn't doing, they would, holler at us, and we'd be able to create the strategy or work with their SEO team. In about 2016, we actually partnered up with our current SEO partner. So we handle all the strategy, SEO strategy, and the content side of things on our end, but Hennessy Digital helps us with all the technical SEO, schema markup. I mean, they have some of the best development and smart SEO teams from across the country. It originally started with just Jason Hennessy and I. Then it just started to evolve. So together we built a machine combined with our content, our formula for writing content, a software system to do so, and the technical side of SEO that they have, and just started killing it 4 years ago, where it was like, wow, what's happening? So it happened over again. But what happened back in 2008 and 2009 is totally different than the environment now, right? We were kind of pioneers with content, until, just like with anything, people start gaming the system, right? They started creating copied content. They started writing fake white letter content behind pages. They started gaming the system, writing really bad, thin content, duplicating content. So Google started creating all these algorithms to eliminate the riffraff, or the black hat SEO, if you will, from the system. So, we had to continue evolve and writing different. Fortunately for us, we came from a writing background and not SEO. We picked up SEO. So our writing style starts from a journalistic type of writing, with a funnel, inverted pyramid type of content. And fortunately, that's what Google wants now for users, but then had to implement that. So we hired writers, and then our internal team would edit and optimize the pages, because most writers didn't know how to do SEO. So we were internally writing. So it was a whole process on writing, editing, and then optimizing, and then posting and doing any technical. So that's kind of where we are today.
So, I mean, that triggers so many questions for me. I actually started my first startup of 3 in the last 15 years or so, was Food 52. It was an online food content, home recipes that were basically eating Epicurious and Bon Appetit's lunch, so to speak, because all the home cooks wanted to collect online. And if you didn't have a food blog, which was the hottest thing back then, same time frame as you in many ways, you really had to deliver exceptional content. But you had to not just deliver content. If you wanted it to produce, you had to cross-link it. You had to really format it properly in the structured data that became so important for something like a recipe or a pricing table or a guide, for example. What is this about? Where's the question and where's the answer, for example? So that is something, the numbered steps, how to do X, Y, and Z. I brought then to your mechanic, where we were building a huge car repair advice site online. And now we see it in our work with our clients at SMITH.AI. Can you distinguish, just as a baseline, what is the difference between, content and SEO content? Like, you could write any article, any blog for your website. Maybe you have a commentary about something that is related to the legal industry that you're in, a practice area that you're in, or your business, how to clean your gutters, or how to navigate a, contested divorce, right? You could talk about anything. What's the difference between just a blog post and like SEO optimized content?
So great question. So a blog post, and I have this argument quite a bit, and Conrad used to beat everybody up about blog posts back in the day, but they're great depending on what site they're on, right? Blog is more personal, informal. It's probably not the bottom of the funnel transactional content that you want to create, where a landing page or like an FAQ somewhere middle of the funnel, right? How do I file for a contested divorce? Someone's researching and searching. So there's certain things that you're going to put in the content. You're going to format it a certain way for the user. You're going to format it a certain way for the Google bots to be able to scan it quickly, right? You want to make sure that you're adding your H1, which is your heading, right? Which is that main question. And Google has allowed us to see so much information, right? With Google Intent now, that it's a lot easier than it was back then to research and see what people are actually asking. So a page like that, you can go through it and Google's going to give you examples of actually all the questions that people are asking. So if I were to build out a how do I file for contested divorce, I would actually go into Google and type that in and see what other questions people are asking. So I'm building the best possible page. What's actually going to also optimize that page is if I'm in Southern California, I'm going to make sure I'm adding Southern California to the content within that page, because I do not want to compete nationally for a term that I'm only going to see clients within locally. And you're also going to get a lot quicker results if you're keeping it localized or regionalized within your market, right? Your website only has so much authority. Unless it's a website that you're investing a lot of money in content and building PR to, you're not going to be able to rank for just an FAQ unless you've been doing a blog since 2000 and everybody thinks you're an authority. So doing
Right.
little things like tweaking and adding a location to an FAQ is actually going to change how you rank towards it.
That's such a good point. And for anyone who's wondering, like, well, how would I accidentally sort of go after too big of a keyword for my law firm or for my business? Think like if you were to write something like how to get divorced, right? You're like, oh my gosh, that's like trying to rank for Honda as like the local car repair shop, right? I mean, that is a big topic that you're going to have a ton of competition, and there's a lot of content that pre-exists before you, right? So if what you're saying, Alex, is that you can actually go down a step and not compete for the biggest keyword in the market, but get at the keywords that people are searching for locally and weave in local relevance, not just throw in a few zip codes, but actually talk about things that indicate you have authority in that local space. So you might reference the courts or judges or other law firms that are, you know, in your space. That might be referral partners, right? Or mediators, for example, if you're working with them, not competitors. And then you might talk about like the progression of, you know, preference for the, you know, husband or wife or child custody, or what is sort of the you know, precedents that are set in your local area. There's so many things that you can talk about to indicate to Google that, yeah, okay, maybe I'll drop some zip codes in here, but I actually know what I'm talking about. How do divorces go in this state in particular? Like if you're in California, some of you have heard me say this before, I've been divorced. I got a divorce in California. They make you wait 6 months. You can't just get a divorce in 3.
Right.
So what are the things like that that are different that can drive down into that local specific knowledge, even at a state level, to then reinforce, hey, Google, I know what I'm talking about. I really do practice and have deep knowledge and expertise in this area. And it relates to people who are also in my area searching for help in this subject area.
Yeah, and you brought up something that made me think too. One of the things that we're diving into now even further is meta descriptions. So something, because Google's really going after usability and how to help the user. So if I'm doing a search, right, before I even get to the page, I'm going to look at the page title. So how do I file for contested divorce in Buffalo, New York, right, so forth. And then maybe some kind of call to action or something that draws my attention. And then the meta description should be a briefing of exactly what the page is about. So that's not only a signal, but it's also a signal to the user like, oh man, this is exactly touching on what I'm looking for. So, you know, you always want to think about that too. It's not just the actual page, but what is Google and the user going to see before they even land on the page?
Absolutely. So, you know, we've, you know, gone a little bit deep into the one subject of, you know, how do you create just SEO related content, SEO driven content, and not just a blog post. But let's zoom back out for a second, bird's eye view. Like, why does creating a content strategy actually matter? And what does it mean to be strategic around your content beyond just typing in a search query into Google and seeing what else Google suggests?
So it's kind of like a bike spoke, right? The spoke's on a bike. So you have the circle in the middle where all the spokes come out of. That's your content strategy. For instance, the blog, the FAQ, the practice area page, the social media post is all going to come out from one strategy. So if we did how to file contested divorce, there's going to probably be about 15 pages surrounding that same exact topic that we could create because there's so many, right? We can create one big one, which we like to call either a pillar or a skyscraper page internally. And those expand on a lot, and then create internal questions that you can put a briefing within the page that link off into other more specific pages on that topic. And all that authority, all that shows authority on your page, because Google ranks each page separately, right? And you just got to be careful not to cannibalize it, but you're just answering a different query every time. But always give as much information to the user as possible.
So if let's take a couple different scenarios. Let's say that you have a website, you've got your about me, your services, maybe you have a general blog page, you've got a contact page. That at a bare minimum is a small business website, right?
Yeah, it's what we call
you are, what you
brochure.
do, how to
Yeah,
get
here's what we do. And it's a brochure, right? The importance of a content strategy is you have your SEO structure, your website design. So think of that as your foundation of your building your house. The content is furnishing absolutely everything internally to the knobs on your cabinets. That's everything that's going to be inside, everything that people are going to see, all the detail, right? Down to the type of marble that you have if you're redoing your house or so. So the content strategy helps to map all that out and plan it with a purpose based on the amount of visitors that the keywords get, the amount of traffic that a certain topic might get, the locations that you're in. So building that strategy doesn't allow you to go out and just spend money building content that's not going to do anything for you because it's purposeless. It helps you align everything, build a plan, and see where you're going. So if a client came to me in your situation where you just said that website called a brochure site, it's a clean slate for us, right? It's something we've done hundreds of times because there's still so many, surprisingly, law firm websites that just have that and maybe their main practice area pages.
Right.
So that gives us an opportunity to not only show them, well, this is what it would look like for you against your competitor. Your competitor in your market has 300 pages and you have 6. That's our first goal. Like, how do we get to those 600 pages that are actually driving traffic and delivering business to this client? We can easily do a gap analysis and see that. So that gap analysis will help us build that strategy where we can create the content for them so they can start competing against that competitor. So that's the main goal of that content strategy, is just to give you a plan, bird's eye view of what you got to do, and then just start following it and creating a calendar of it on how you're going to do it. Because it's a lot of work. Like sometimes it can take 6-9 months. Some clients, depending on their budget, it's going to take years. But what you're doing when you develop content for a site is you're building an asset. You always have to think of it as a really good investment because it's a 24/7 salesperson that is on your site selling for you if your website has enough authority to rank and show up when someone is searching.
100%. I mean, we, started out with receptionist services. We added website chat, and it was really remarkable to see how many people actually don't call because they like that website experience so much that it becomes their little nook for a moment. And they're reading the content. If you are doing it well, you're answering questions, and that might spark other questions that they have. And especially with legal, maybe also finance, sometimes IT to an extent, because they don't know how to verbalize. They really want to, show a screenshot or type what they're seeing. A lot of these specialized businesses benefit from that chat that's now on this site that helps to capture the value of the leads that are coming in. And what ends up happening is, you're talking about, and this is something that we should touch on, very sensitive subjects. And some people may have a challenge writing about how do I wrap my mind around content that is sometimes really difficult to write about. It might be domestic abuse. It might be child custody. You want to be able to offer, expertise without giving legal advice. That's something else that comes into play with website content. And then again, that draws into chat where maybe there's a disclaimer where you have a conversation, it's not legal advice, and then you have the conversation continue with the attorney. So you basically turn it from a flat web page into a dialogue and a future interaction, and there's the funnel actually happening. So let's talk for a moment about legal specific, and you can think about how this applies to your business if you're not in legal. The difficult topics that might be critical for you to write about that aren't high SEO value, but that are very high right fit conversion value, right? Like if someone is reading that and you've already brought them to the page, is that an important part of a content strategy? Because you could just focus on the most important keywords and never get down to maybe the nitty gritty. How do you balance that in the content? And is there even a call to action in the SEO content to learn more if you're getting down into the weeds like that?
So it really comes down to the type of practice area, right? So it would have to be those difficult practice areas where it's tough. When you were talking about divorce, like you said, child custody, some criminal pages, right? No one wants to chat or talk about, what the what's happened to them. So they usually like to pick up the phone and call. I usually leave anything that technical and personal to the attorney to possibly blog about or talk about in a generic sense, because it doesn't make sense for them to invest in us and write that when it's so close to them to do it, right? I wouldn't want to charge anybody to do something that they know so well.
Mhm.
What I would incorporate in pages is maybe a briefing of a similar case study. So if someone landed on a transactional page, to put a case study so someone can relate, be like, okay, this is what happened there. 2 or 3 different small case studies where, some type of situation had in family or a child abuse case or something like that, where they can relate to. But the goal really is, when you're investing on your website content, is for them to pick up the phone and call, to use your chat feature, text. We get a lot of calls and questions from attorneys. Why is my bounce rate, right? Once you start doing SEO and you start buying content and investing on your website, you start, the first thing people are like, oh, look at your bounce rate. Bounce rate doesn't matter on a transactional website. You want your bounce rate to be low, because that means someone read enough of the page to pick up the phone and call or chat, or they either read it and didn't go anywhere else. But typically it's because they picked up the phone and called, right? You're ranking for it for a reason. It's answering the question. And that's why the bounce rate usually is high on those pages, because they're reading enough to, okay, I trust these guys. They have the authority. They know what they're talking about. It relates to either my injury or my case. Let me pick up the phone and call. Let me use the chat feature. Let me fill out the form and go from there. On blog pages, I had one family law attorney, amazing writer. He wrote so well, it made our transactional pages look bad. But he was an amazing blogger. So eventually, we just went separate ways, because his blog was so informative and hit the heart of the client so well that he just became naturally that person, right? It didn't matter that he had transactional pages anymore. He set himself as the authority because he wrote it. It came from his heart. He talked about the specific cases. And that natural type of writing can really work for you if you have the time to develop it, for the website to continue to grow. And eventually the clients are going to come because they're searching differently. And what he found is, because they were searching differently, it was a higher end client. So, you got to think about it both ways, right? Like a lot of the clients we work with, when they invest in us, are volume. They're trying to grow, right? They're going from a small to mid-sized firm. They're going from mid, they want to go to large, they want to go to large, and they want to go national. So they'll hire us because we can do it in volume. We have a formula. We can just build it out, and we know what's going to work. But when you're a small solo or something like that, and you want to blog and really touch the user, I always, just guide them, tell them exactly what they need, where they need to do the research, and say, it's probably, if you have the time to do it yourself, do it yourself.
So that's really interesting. One of the other things that comes to mind is, what is SEO versus like shareable content? So what you're talking about, and I've seen this on a lot of blogs, is really actionable, shareable content, something to put on LinkedIn or maybe Medium and drive traffic and awareness back to you. If you're in a large metro area, that's particularly valuable to drive up referrals and awareness in a highly competitive market. If you're in a small rural market, you probably already have a strong brand in that small footprint. Maybe it's not as critical for you, but there is sort of a distinct difference that you just touched on between that really deeply personal, shareable, put it on your personal LinkedIn feed content. And then there's the SEO content that drives it answering a specific search query or queries. So those are really two distinct things. And I think what you're saying is that shareable content, that really deep personal content is valuable. Don't stop doing that. If you're great at it, if you like it, maybe someone on your team is great at it. Awesome. If you're running a law firm, you do have to be mindful that it should probably have an attorney's review if there's any sort of, connotated legal advice that's being shared, right? But other than that, I completely agree with you. And it can be a joint approach if you have the budget and the time for it. We are getting a number of questions that have come through, and actually there were some people who had emailed me ahead of time. So I want to take a brief moment and address a few things. Now, one question and then we'll get to the 3 types of content to work on and the content refresh that I promised you and that Alex mentioned. So the first question that came through, really interesting, like especially for small businesses, small law firms, etc. What do you need to do to protect yourself from the people who are pretending to be SEO optimizers and end up, inducing a cyber attack? They get your site credentials, they falsify their own credentials, and now they have access to your website. Like, are there any signs beyond maybe reading online reviews, if those haven't been falsified? What can you do to validate that an agency is who they say they are?
Well, I see that a lot. We actually, through We Do Web Content, got hit with a hacker. A couple of our law firms were hit, and we were able to catch them because we were working on the back end. But when hiring an SEO agency, don't go by price. There's just so much information, so many willing people to help and advise on different forums on what you should be doing. Because if you go for cheap, you're going to get cheap. It's just very difficult with SEO. Like if you're going to buy a local pack project from an SEO, go to an SEO firm that's worked with law firms, right? Look for someone specifically that does law firm work, because some people will do a la carte work for you. Create strategies, right? If they're doing strategies, if you are writing and hiring out, it's not just about buying a piece of content. There's about 7 extra steps after you receive a piece of content that actually make that piece of content work. So it's never just about, hey, I'm going to go buy 10 pages of content. There's a lot of work that goes into that to continue developing and making that content grow and making it work for you. The other one is caption. A lot of people get hacked through their form. So having the right caption and plugins, work with your web developer to find what that is. Maybe don't allow any out of the country websites to visit your site and fill out the form. Just be careful with that, because some phone companies are also tied to that. So you want to make sure it's done correctly, because sometimes it won't allow specific text or emails to come from someone delivering from an AT&T phone or Samsung phone or something like that. So you got to be careful that the web developer is doing. So like I said, when you're working with someone that's reputable and has a full team, there's just so much that goes in on the back end that might not be strictly associated to transactional SEO, but just the web development side of it. The protection and security of your own website is important. All of our sites are on our own WP Engine developers hosting. So if you do have WordPress, we always suggest you use that, because they do a lot of the protection. They do a lot of the changes that go through WordPress sites. So it's important to at least have that security done at minimum. I mean, it's only like $350 a year for that. So we always advise and have our clients jump on that, and then we monitor everything. So if you're not doing any work on your site, my suggestion would be hire a reputable web developer to always be checking on it and just make sure that they're adding the right images. If they're posting a piece of content for you, that it's protected, and so forth. So there's just so much that can break when you're trying to do it yourself, unless you're using a Foss Web Marketing. That's one of those do-it-yourself companies that's done such an amazing job with their proprietary system. that just allows you to know that your website's always protected. They do a really good job. But if
Got it. So basically your kit is set up with the protection
everything's
in
set up.
place. You play within the playpen. It's
Right,
set up to protect you.
So yeah, you might limit it in some areas, but if you're solo and you're growing, I think it's an amazing platform. WordPress, I wouldn't just have anybody build it for you. It's got to be a reputable company. You know, if you're going to invest and work with someone that's going to take care of it and monitor everything on a monthly basis.
Okay, so one last question, then we'll get back to the agenda. So we've got someone here, family law attorney in Atlanta, who's had her website for a year and it's not showing up on Google when people search for my site. So, you know, maybe there's some no index thing happening. Maybe there's other issues. You know, I don't know what it means to actually have a website up for a year and not show up on Google when you're specifically searching for that site. I don't know if to take that literally or not, but you know, she said that she's paying monthly for Google ads. She doesn't have an SEO content professional working with her, but thought, you know, I thought my site would at least appear at a minimum. You know, how do you troubleshoot something like that? And there's actually the URL that I put in the chat for you if you want to take a look at that.
Yes, let me share my screen. I'll look at it real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, you should be able to share.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a site search of the URL and just see if the pages are being indexed. Let's see. Where's the chat?
So it's barnettlawfirm.com.
BARNETT.
NETTE lawfirm.com. Mm-hmm. There you go.
So it's saying it's only coming up for 6 index pages. So it could be an indexing issue from when the website was set up. That the sitemaps maybe not being sent to Google or the pages aren't. So it's a WordPress site that was built. So it should be very simple to get this going and submit your site. Well, for someone who knows, obviously. Do you want to ask the question on what pages they may have? And here's another thing to consider too. When you're building these sites, navigation is truly important, right? When Google's looking at a website, they're looking at it from top left down. And you just want that structure, even though they're looking at it from source code, it's still, you know, like the URL structure, Barnett Law.
If you're a user, right?
Yeah.
Imagine you're a human being. The Google bot is almost as effective.
Right. So like Barnett Law, depending on where you are with your law firm, what city and state you're in, you want to make sure, you know, you're typing in what this website's about, right? First things, right? There's probably very little optimization also being done. So that could be another issue. You're not telling Google what this website's about. It's just saying it's Barnett Law. So maybe, you know, family law attorneys in whatever city you're in.
Atlanta, Georgia, right.
Consistency is important, domestic relations services. So you've even got a video. You're obviously watching something, right? And following what you've read about content. I would make this a separate page, child custody.
There's a ton of great content in here.
Yeah, this is great.
Very interesting. It needs more structure.
Yeah, I would format it differently. So I would consider looking at this page again and maybe look at some other websites that are out there, some of your competitors or colleagues, and restructure the page. But again, here's a huge opportunity for you to rank, right? By calling this page what it should be, right? It's your location, divorce, like this doesn't really tell the user a lot, right?
So I want to just touch on that for a second, Alex, so that we don't ignore some really important topic that we might be taking for granted, which is that like if you have a subject, multiple subjects on a page, and it's not the title and heading and topic of that page baked into the URL. If we look at, barnettlawfirm.com/services, that should have divorce in it if the page is about divorce. It should have child custody in it if the page is about child custody. You might even want Atlanta in it if that's your area. Or if you're really only in the suburb, you might not even say Atlanta. You might say, that Southwest metro area or whatever. Now, if you're in a big enough, metro area, Dallas, Fort Worth, for example, you might not actually serve that entire area. Who knows? But there's so much content here, like taking each subject and putting them on its own page allows you to rank better for each specific subject. You don't lose out because someone's not, seeing everything all at once. They'll get to each station in the buffet, and they may not need everything in the buffet, but you can have other modules that sort of show up on each page. For divorce, there's going to be something related to child custody. You link off to that page. Okay. You're not losing sort of that context of the greater picture.
Right. Same information. So just breaking up the navigation and separating those pages out into their own pages is going to help a lot. But yeah, I mean, I think you are halfway through the battle because you've developed so much content. I would just work on formatting it, optimizing it for your specific location. Really think of what you want to call the services, right? So they're a little more user-friendly and more specific. These wills, trusts, and estate planning, you might want to name that something differently and then break those out into different pages. But that could be, there's just several reasons here that the pages aren't coming up. But I think this is a pretty obvious one. Your page titles, I don't think you have a lot of content unless it's all hidden, but you could easily have about 12 pages if you start breaking all these up. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alex. And one of the things I thought that we might also do is to see maybe an exemplary site that you have worked on. I know that you've worked with Ben Crump, which is super impressive. We all know who he is, civil rights attorney. Maybe we can shed a little light on your work for him.
Sure.
Doesn't he have the perfect site, or what's so great about his site that we could learn from that, small businesses, small firm owners could emulate?
So we all try to emulate something bigger, right? So Ben Crump, he's not our typical client. He already had huge authority. He's one of the nation's best civil rights attorney. But what made Ben Crump different is he went from civil rights attorney to wanting to become a personal injury attorney as well. And not only locally, but nationally. So that was the challenge. So when we took the site on, our development team and design team did a great job redesigning the new website based on all their branding. But more importantly, started working on the navigation of this site. You can see they're on the news consistently. His main hero image and contact form, right? There's just so many tweaks and little things when you look at a legal website or any website that's gonna be transactional that you want to deliver traffic, and every single click and page read is important to your bottom line. Is you want to make them all work specifically for you. So for instance, the homepage, Ben Crump, trial lawyer for justice, that's the theme of this website. So that's what you want to think about. And then you start breaking it down to all of the different practice areas that they're in. So, personal injury was one of the ones that we added, but we didn't get specific in location because we want a national presence. So for this was our main theme page for anything related to practice for personal injury. But that also breaks down architecturally into personal injury lawyers in all these other markets. So you see, if I'm here, when we're technically building the architecture of the site and developing the content for it, not only are you interlinking within practice areas, so these would be national practice areas under the personal injury lawyer page, and then these would be national personal injury pages that would have their own practice areas pages within. So if we go here, here's your location schema, your images, and then it goes into practice areas within the page. So now we know areas we serve: Tallahassee, slip and fall lawyer. So everything is by design. And those are little tweaks that, change a page from just a piece of content to an SEO optimized page within a website that Google can now crawl, and you're telling Google what it is, right? Google doesn't really recognize everything unless you tell it what it is. And by having content, and the bots can read it, but they're reading everything in a source code. So everything within the HTML, the side of the reading it in between. But again, it's just little things like the heading, the page title, the URL structure, the heading of the page, right? You're telling it exactly what is about. And then you want to tell, well, obviously show images, and then additional areas that they find, right? And we're actually restructuring the pages, and we can actually touch on refreshes because of this, because of Google's algorithm. So this is what a page might have looked like, within the last year. Now the page, what we're doing now, can I just jump into the content refresh on why that would be different?
Absolutely.
So a content refresh will look at this page, and although this page still works and it ranks, Google released an algorithm back in May that wants more user thought process in it. So where, we were doing Tallahassee slip and fall injury lawyer, you kind of got into, most people this. Now you're diving into and switching the page into what did a Tallahassee slip and fall injury lawyer do? You have 3 seconds to capture the person now within this page. So the goal now is going to be 2 paragraphs and bullet points. So this will probably move down. We're going to add additional bullet points on this page and continue growing the size of the page. Not only for Google, but what happens through time with content is your competition starts not copying, but looking on how you're doing things. Oh man, he's ranking. How do I rank better? They want to create a better page. So now a content refresh is not redoing or rewriting the page, but refreshing the page. And that's Google Gold. Google loves, existing content that is revamped or redone more so than a new page, right? It's already indexed. It's already in their database. All you have to go do is tweak it. So it shows them that you're not only creating new content, but you're enhancing it. You're thinking of the user. You're thinking of them when they're doing it by going in and changing and adding any new additions. So they love that. So that's Project 2021 is all content refresh. Any content that was created within the last 3 years probably should go back and get looked at. And it goes back and reiterates, why do you need a content strategy? Well, now I can go back to the content strategy, see dates, see the pages, see where I'm ranking on those, and go back and fix those and move them maybe from position 6 to position 3.
So yeah, some examples of what you could refresh, adding bullets, maybe front loading the top takeaways from a long skyscraper page, possibly adding FAQ, testimonials, things that speak in the user language are really great. What other examples would you provide there, Alex?
I would definitely look at the practice area pages, the average page, and maybe not so much Uber local page, but the average practice area page should be anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 words for a specific law practice. If we were looking at Barnett, right, her pages were long, and they just needed structure. They could have been broken up into bullet points and added links, right? So those links would turn into additional pages that were anywhere from 800 to 1,500 words. And you don't have to go by word count. Google doesn't care really about word count. What quality means is answer the user's question, right? As long as I'm answering the user's question the best possible way I can, that's good quality, right? It doesn't have to be, you always have to have 1,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 words. The reason word count went is because people were just doing the minimal they could at 300 to 800 words, and it was saturating the system, right? Saturating the database with content that was thin, that wasn't really delivering what the user needed.
So there's another question that came through about how should law firms with a national client base represent their location? Should I use the United States? I responded in the chat accidentally to you, Alex. So I'll just say this for the person who asked that question, then I'll put it to you to answer in your way. Typically, yeah, you want to say nationwide, U.S., across the U.S., serving clients, et cetera. You probably also want to speak to those major metro areas. As you can build out more and more location-based pages that you serve, great. If you know there's some targets that are top hits for you based on population or demographic fit, yeah, you want to build landing pages, not just for the nation, but also specifically for regions or cities. What would you say, Alex, on this front?
Yeah, I agree. I think you have to go down as deep as you can to capture that. Google's become so smart locally that if you have a Tallahassee page, but you don't have a page within one of the Tallahassee neighborhoods, that you're probably not going to get found because there's so much on mobile search. There's so much at desktop now when you're working from home. So it recognizes exactly where you are. You might just be in a suburb of Tallahassee. So it's important to have those city-based pages as well. And we build our strategy just like that. We start from statewide all the way to the uber cities, unless they're super small, right? Some cities, like, it's different in every state, but like in Florida, they can be within, 20 miles, and it might not make sense to charge a client to build that kind of page, but so add it within one of the major longer pages.
Okay.
But
so
you
should really touch on as many, micro locations as you can.
Right. So, I mean, if we go to, so he wanted to go after just everything locally, and he's got so much authority, right, where it makes it easier for him to rank for these. But if we go to a super localized attorney, like, yeah, I don't even know if I can show any other clients. But okay, you can look up a Uber, like get in and get really close. The more location pages you're creating, the better. And that was an issue with local SEO too, right? Because you had people that didn't have local offices in certain markets that were pretending to have that, or having, fake offices, or having people pretend that they were there. So a big issue in SEO and legal SEO. So the only way to get around that and do it legally and doing it the right way is to create content around it, right? We serve these areas, right? Well, we'll go out 30 miles to do this, and you leave it up to the client on whether they want to choose it. And again, the other things that benefit that are your branding, right? Are you on radio? Are you on TV? What else are you doing? Where are they seeing you? So that also helps as well.
Got it. Well, so let's sort of start to wrap it up, and we talked about the content refresh. We talked about the content strategy. What are the 3 types of content to work on in 2021, in your opinion?
Always continue doing your location pages if you haven't had. So first and foremost, first thing is you do is your content strategy. You go out and look at what your competitors are doing. You can pull up a site like SEMrush for free, and it'll pull up all your competitors and tell you exactly what they're doing, based on how much content they have, how many keywords they're ranking, and even pull a report. And that'll help you at least start off with some kind of base content strategy. But once you do that, is always your main pages, create the silo for the website. So your main practice area pages. FAQs are huge. Frequently asked questions have become one of the best pieces of content to create in addition to your transactional pages, because of the questions that people are asking on Google. And, if you, just real quick, just Google intent will just show you everything, right? That's already out there that you can start creating, just all of the different pieces of content that are out there that are telling you, here we go. Like, people are also asking this. This should all be part of your content strategy. So developing content like this that answers these queries, and these are all different law firms that are answering these queries. So those are benefit. Video, you can never go wrong with video. At the beginning of COVID last year, I had a webinar with a leading expert, marketing expert, Harlan Schillinger, and we dove into why video is important. Yeah, he's awesome. And that was something that people could have dedicated the whole time they were working from home, is to develop their law firm video strategy. You could do it. You could have done it easily from home at your desk, left your shorts on and put on a suit and started asking frequently asked questions. Very easy to optimize those and put them on YouTube, and then eventually have them on your website. Content is content, right? Some people like reading, some people like the video. We like having both for both the user, different types of users, and it helps enhance the page, especially the link from YouTube. So definitely your landing pages, frequently asked questions, video, and add an extra one. 2020, 2021's been such a big year for collaboration and working with people. If you're not doing a podcast or working with your colleagues, if you're not working with mediators or the doctors that you're working with or anything like that, and getting your voice out through all the different channels that we have socially, you're really missing out. I had a really good conversation with my sons last night, who are really good artists, but you're either a consumer or creator. So you're either creating the content that people are watching or you're consuming it. And for me, I want to be the one that's creating it. And my sons are both artists, and instead of sitting around playing video games and playing, I'm like, you guys are awesome. There's an opportunity for you to be creating content out there right now that in 4 years, 3-4 years, if you dedicate the right amount of time, is going to pay you. It's literally going to pay you. We're in a very good environment where content is still king. Content is everything. I mean, look at Netflix, billions of dollars for creating content. I know it's separate from the legal content and small business, but it just helps you wrap your head around on what content is. Content's just everything that you can create, that someone is absorbing, that you're identifying, creating authority, and changing and answering the question.
I'll also say that from the sort of reverberating effects of content, when you have these pages, you can take snippets of them, you can take snippets of your videos, you can share them on social. If you're wondering, well, it sounds like so much work now I have to do with SEO. I also was going to work on my social sort of strategy. All of these things drip down from the top, from that large investment you'll make on content. You can take pieces of all of them and distribute them across. You can share them. They're evergreen. They live on. They don't have to just be shared once. So think about this not just as filling up 1, 2, 3, 10, 50 landing pages, but as a repository, as a library for you to share from in many different forms. And just on the video topic, Alex, that's a great search strategy, because obviously Google owns YouTube. YouTube has its own search queries in there, and they show up on regular Google search too. So that's something you can add it to your Google My Business profile when you have photos and videos to upload. The sort of shareable network that you build with that multimedia really elevates your brand, in addition to making you visible.
Exactly.
So there's one last question, around duplicate content. So if you're building local pages, how much concern do you have to have around the content on every single one of those pages being totally unique and new? Are there parameters, 30, 50, 70% should be original? How does Google treat that if you're trying to rank for DC nursing home abuse versus Chicago?
So even more local, if you're DC and do Virginia, there's certain things that you can do to the page. Google's okay. John Mueller recently had a video where they said, we're just optimizing the page. I mean, we're just crawling and indexing the current page and not worrying about anything. But if they're not worrying about the other ones, they're not going to rank. So to get them to rank as well, you have to differentiate the content. There's really not a percentage. There's a allowance for typical duplicate content on a page, like the call to action, the law firm name. There's certain things on a page that are always going to be redundant that they allow for. But you want to try to get as specific as you can and change the language of the page. I mean, it's so easy. There's just so many words that you can use in the beginning, right? A DC page is probably going to be much longer than a uber localized page anyway. So you might have a 3,000 word nursing home page and one 800 word page, right? You don't always need that much content to appease the user. It's what am I going up against my competitor? What do they have? And then how am I answering the question, right? So it's easy to avoid it. We have so many different writers that it's, although still redundant to create so many localized pages, it allows for us to not make that duplicate content issue. But you're still going to have some duplicate content as long as you're not copy pasting. It's just not considered duplicate because you don't have the exact same writing or anything. Like it really would have to be 40% copy and paste it to be duplicate content. So I think if you're rewriting and doing a brand new original organic page, you should be fine.
So don't do the Mad Lib style content. That might work for paid search landing pages, but it doesn't work for SEO.
Right. Yeah. Your paid search pages aren't getting indexed on for organic SEO. So
they shouldn't be, or else they're cannibalizing your SEO.
Right.
I've seen that before. So anyway, just wrapping up here, last 4 minutes, Alex, how can people reach out to you? Can they reach out to you? What sort of, work are you taking on these days? And what advice, do you have as next steps for everyone here?
People can reach out to me through the website, or just email me directly, alex@wedowebcontent.com. I'm always very generous with my time to my demise, but happy to help anyone. We focus a lot on in the PI space. 2021 is a new year for us where we're going to allow new clients to come in depending on the practice area, depending on their knowledge of SEO and knowing what it is, what the purpose is, what their long-term goal is. So it really would just take a conversation to see how we can help. If not, we can guide you in the right direction. I'd love to do that. The new training courses that you put up, I know are going to be super helpful for everyone if they can't hire anyone. It's always nice when people try it themselves and they come to us, they're like, oh my God, I can't believe how you do it. But again, always, I want to reiterate the power of content, but the complexity of it. Like, don't think you can just go buy a piece of content, give someone a topic and say, hey, write this page. There's a lot of things that have to be done on the back end, right? Just make sure it's edited, it's optimized, it's posted and published correctly, it's submitted to the sitemap, submitted to Google, it's indexed properly, it's not cannibalizing any other pages. So it all starts with the strategy. Just be careful and, have fun and just know everything should be done with a purpose. There's a goal for it. If it's on your website, it should hopefully be either answering somebody's question or in the funnel to get them to the question, where the question will get them to the transactional page.
Yeah, and maybe it's as simple as that. Identify the questions that your ideal leads have and answer them. Also, I will say, if you go at it alone, or if you go out to, Upwork or another freelance site and you just have someone write content for you, you're missing an opportunity there with that investment that might seem cheap at the time, but it doesn't have a strategic approach the way that, a dedicated agency does. So, if you work for at least even a brief period of time with a dedicated, SEO team, then you have a foundation to build from, right? You can continue working with that team. You can supplement it. You can supplement it with your own content. As Alex said, maybe you're a great writer, but if you don't have that foundation in place, that's going to be a lot of wasted effort, and a dollar is still a dollar, right? So every ounce of energy that you spend sort of finding the right people, that matters. It could be the opportunity cost between your energy there and somewhere else. So be mindful of like how you get this up and running. The DIY approach is actually best implemented once you already have a little bit of knowledge and a strong foundation to build on top of. Our recommendation is always let the expert niche sort of people set things up properly for you, and then you can cook whatever you want in your very nice kitchen that's now in place, right? So that's, if I can share some guidance there, that would be mine. Really impressed with Alex and his team. And whoever you choose, I think that this advice today will be invaluable to you. Feel free to get in touch. Again, I'm Maddie Martin. I'm the head of growth and education for SMITH.AI, and you're welcome to get in touch with me as well if you have questions following this video. Maddie, M-A-D-D-Y, @SMITH.AI, and I will share this recording with everyone who registered, so keep an eye out in your emails. If you're watching this live, details will be in the show notes. So thank you for tuning in. And Alex, thank you so much for joining me today. Really great conversation here.
Likewise, thank you so much for having me. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Take care, everyone. Take care. Bye.